The fluorescent lights of Mercy General Hospital's emergency room had been flickering for 3 days straight, and nobody seemed to care enough to fix them. I'd stopped noticing around hour 9 of my shift, somewhere between the teenager with the broken arm and the elderly woman who'd fallen in her bathtub. My feet ached in a way that made me want to cry. My scrubs were stained with someone else's blood, and the constant pressure in my lower back reminded me that being 6 months pregnant while working double shifts was probably not what my obstetrician had in mind when she said, light activity. But light activity didn't pay the bills. Light activity didn't cover the rent on my studio apartment in Queens, or the mounting medical bills from prenatal appointments, or the fact that I'd need to somehow furnish a nursery in the next 3 months. Light activity was a luxury for women who had partners, or family, or savings accounts that held more than $217. I had none of those things. "Maya, you look like death," Rochelle said, appearing at my elbow with a concerned expression that creased her dark skin into worried lines. She'd been my mentor when I first started at Mercy 2 years ago, and she'd become the closest thing I had to family in this city. "When's the last time you ate something?" I tried to remember. Breakfast had been a granola bar at 6 a.m. Lunch had been interrupted by a cardiac emergency. It was now almost midnight. "I'm fine." "You're not fine. You're 6 months pregnant and you've been on your feet for 14 hours. She pressed a protein bar into my hand with the authority of someone who wouldn't take no for an answer. "Eat this. And don't even think about picking up that extra shift on Saturday. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you." The protein bar tasted like cardboard and artificial chocolate, but I ate it anyway, leaning against the nurse's station and trying not to think about how much my feet hurt. Through the emergency room doors, I could see the Manhattan skyline glittering in the distance, a reminder of all the wealth and opportunity that existed just across the river, in a world I'd never be part of. "Dr. Chen needs you in trauma too." Another nurse called out, and I pushed off from the counter, ignoring the way my body protested the movement. The patient in trauma 2 was a 30-something businessman who'd been mugged 3 blocks from his hotel. Superficial cuts, a black eye forming, but nothing life-threatening. I cleaned his wounds with practiced efficiency, while Dr. Chen asked questions about head trauma and checked his pupils. "You should file a police report," I said quietly as I applied butterfly bandages to the cut above his eyebrow. "Sometimes they can recover stolen property." He laughed, bitter and sharp. "In this city? They'll too. File it away and forget about it within an hour." He wasn't wrong, but I didn't say so. Instead, I finished bandaging him up and moved on to the next patient, and the one after that, until finally, mercifully, my shift ended at 2 a.m. The subway ride back to Queens was nearly empty at that hour. I slumped in my seat, one hand resting protectively on the swell of my belly, feeling the baby kick against my palm. She was active tonight, doing what I'd started thinking of as her midnight gymnastics routine. "I know, baby girl," I whispered. "Just a few more months, and then everything will be different." It was a lie, and we both knew it. In a few more months, everything would be harder. Childcare was expensive. Formula was expensive. Diapers and clothes and everything else a baby needed was expensive. And I'd be doing it all alone, because the baby's father had made it very clear that fatherhood wasn't part of his life plan when I'd told him I was pregnant. My apartment was dark and cold. When I finally dragged myself through the door at 3 a.m., too tired to shower, too tired to even change out of my scrubs, I collapsed onto my secondhand couch and was asleep within minutes. The next morning arrived far too soon, announced by my alarm blaring at 10 a.m. 4 days off stretched ahead of me, a rare gift from the scheduling gods, and I intended to spend at least the first day doing absolutely nothing. But my phone had other ideas. Final notice, rent payment overdue, pay within 48 hours or face eviction proceedings. I stared at the text message from my landlord, my stomach sinking. I'd paid rent. I knew I'd paid rent. But when I checked my bank account, My heart dropped into my shoes. The payment had bounced. Insufficient funds. I'd forgotten about the automatic payment to my student loans. $400 that had come out 3 days ago, leaving me short for rent by exactly $260. $260 might as well have been $2,000. I didn't have it. I wouldn't have it by the deadline. For the first time in months, I let myself cry. Not the quiet, controlled tears I'd perfected during my pregnancy, but great heaving sobs that made my whole body shake and probably weren't great for the baby. But I couldn't stop. The weight of everything, the exhaustion and fear and loneliness, crashed over me in waves. When I finally cried myself out, I washed my face, made myself a cup of tea, and did what I always did when things got impossible. I made a plan. I could pick up an extra shift. Rochelle would tell me not to, but Rochelle didn't have an eviction notice hanging over her head. Or I could try to sell some things, though I didn't own much worth selling. Or I could. My phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Miss Torres? This is Catherine from Elite Event Services. We have your application for catering work, and we have an urgent need for servers tonight. High-end private event in Manhattan. 4 hours of work, $250 cash. I'd applied to a dozen catering companies a month ago, desperate for any supplemental income. None of them had called back until now. What kind of event? I asked, already knowing I'd say yes regardless of the answer. Private dinner party. Very exclusive clientele. You'd need to be at the venue by 6 p.m. for orientation. Black pants, white button-down shirt, comfortable shoes. Can you make it? $250. Almost exactly what I needed to avoid eviction. I'll be there, I said. The venue was in Tribeca, a converted warehouse that had been transformed into something elegant and expensive. The kind of place where each piece of artwork on the walls probably cost more than my annual salary. I arrived at 5:45, dressed in my nicest black pants and a white shirt that was getting a little tight across my belly, hoping the event coordinator wouldn't notice I was pregnant and send me home. Catherine turned out to be a severe woman in her 50s who looked me up and down with a critical eye. You're Maya? Yes, ma'am. Pregnant? My heart sank. 6 months. But I can work, I promise. I'm on my feet all day at my regular job. She held up a hand. I don't care as long as you can do the work. But this is a very particular event. Very particular guests. You speak when spoken to. You don't ask questions. You don't make eye contact unless necessary. And you absolutely do not gossip about anything you see or hear tonight. Understood? Understood. She handed me a server's vest that at least hid my belly somewhat. There are 12 guests tonight. You'll be responsible for 3 tables in the main dining room. Drinks, appetizers, entrees, dessert. Keep the water glasses full, clear plates promptly, and stay invisible. Can you do that? Invisible. That was basically the story of my life. Yes, ma'am. The other servers were young, polished, and looked like they did this regularly. They chatted quietly while we set up, but I kept to myself, focusing on learning the layout of the dining room and trying not to think about how much my back already hurt. At 7 p.m. sharp, the guests began to arrive. I was in the kitchen, loading my tray with champagne flutes, when I heard Catherine's voice take on a tone I hadn't heard before. Deferential, almost reverent. Mr. Volkov, welcome. Your table is ready. Through the kitchen door's window, I caught my first glimpse of him. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with dark hair styled back from a face that could have been carved from marble. Sharp cheekbones, strong jaw, and eyes so dark they looked black from a distance. He wore a suit that probably cost more than my car had, before it died and I'd had to sell it for parts. Everything about him screamed power, from the way he moved through the space as if he owned it to the way other guests subtly adjusted their positions to accommodate his presence. 2 men flanked him. Security, I realized. They weren't dressed like security, but the way their eyes constantly scanned the room, the way their jackets bulged slightly on one side, told me everything I needed to know. "Who is that?" I whispered to the server next to me, a young guy named Marcus. He gave me an incredulous look. "You don't know? That's Alexei Volkov. He basically runs the Russian organized crime in New York. And half of New Jersey." He grabbed his own tray. "Best advice? Don't look at him, don't talk to him, and pray he doesn't notice you exist." My mouth went dry. Organized crime. Mafia. I was serving drinks to actual criminals. But $250. I needed $250. I took a deep breath, picked up my tray, and pushed through the kitchen doors into the dining room. The evening proceeded smoothly at first. The guests were polite, if distant. They spoke in low voices, sometimes in English, sometimes in Russian or Italian or languages I couldn't identify. I kept their water glasses full, delivered their appetizers, and stayed as invisible as possible. Volkov's table was in the corner, positioned so he could see the entire room. I wasn't assigned to his section, thank God, but I couldn't help stealing glances in his direction. There was something magnetic about him, something that drew the eye even as every instinct screamed to look away. He was in deep conversation with an older man, their heads bent close together. Even from across the room, I could feel the intensity of their discussion. I was clearing plates from one of my tables when I heard it. A snippet of conversation in Russian from the table directly behind Volkov's. I didn't speak Russian, but I heard one word clearly: poison. I froze, plate half lifted from the table. The man speaking was young, maybe 30, with slicked back blonde hair and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He was speaking to his companion, another young man, and they kept glancing toward Volkov's table. I moved to the next plate, trying to look like I was just doing my job, straining to hear more. My heart hammered in my chest. The blonde man pulled out a small vial from his jacket pocket, showing it to his companion. It was barely bigger than my thumb, filled with clear liquid. He slipped it back into his pocket and said something else in Russian that made his companion laugh nervously. They were going to poison him. They were going to poison Alexei Volkov, and I was the only one who'd noticed. Every rational thought in my head screamed at me to ignore it. This wasn't my business. These were criminals. Let them kill each other. Take your $250 and go home. But there was another voice, quieter but impossible to ignore. The same voice that had made me become a nurse in the first place. The voice that said every life mattered, even the lives of people who'd probably done terrible things. I couldn't let someone die. Not when I could prevent it. My hands trembled as I carried the plates back to the kitchen. I had maybe minutes before the next course came out. Minutes to figure out how to warn him without getting myself killed in the process. I couldn't just walk up to his table. His security would stop me. And if the would-be poisoners saw me talking to him, I'd be their next target. I needed to be subtle. Smart. A napkin. I could write on a napkin. In the kitchen, I grabbed a pen from Catherine's clipboard and a clean cloth napkin from the stack. My hand shook so badly I could barely write, but I managed to scrawl 4 words in capital letters. They poisoned your drink. I folded the napkin and tucked it into my vest, my heart racing so fast I felt dizzy. The baby kicked hard, as if sensing my fear. "You okay?" Marcus asked, giving me a concerned look. "You look pale." "I'm fine," I lied. "Just need some water." The next course was being plated. I loaded my tray with the entrees for my section, my mind racing through scenarios. How could I get the napkin to him? I wasn't serving his table. I couldn't just walk over, unless I dropped something. I carried my tray out into the dining room, moving toward my assigned tables. But as I passed near Volkov's table, I let my foot catch on absolutely nothing, stumbling forward with a gasp. The tray tilted, plates slid. I managed to catch most of them, but one tumbled toward Volkov's table, landing with a crash that made the entire room go silent. "I'm so sorry," I stammered, setting down my tray and rushing to clean up the broken ceramic and scattered food. "I'm so sorry. I'll clean this up right away." Volkov's security was on their feet immediately, hands moving toward their jackets. But Volkov himself raised a hand, stopping them. "It's fine," he said, his voice deep and accented. "Russian, definitely Russian. Accidents happen." I knelt beside his chair, gathering pieces of broken plate onto a spare napkin, acutely aware of how close I was to him. Close enough to smell his cologne, expensive and woody. Close enough to see the scars on his knuckles. As I reached for a piece of ceramic near his water glass, I palmed the folded napkin from my vest and dropped it directly onto his lap, camouflaged among the debris I was cleaning. Our eyes met for a fraction of a second. His were the darkest brown I'd ever seen, almost black and impossibly cold. They swept over me, taking in everything: the pregnancy, the cheap clothes, the way my hands shook. Then I was standing, apologizing again, backing away with my makeshift debris collector, while Catherine rushed over with a dustpan and more apologies. I fled to the kitchen, my heart hammering so hard I thought I might pass out. I'd done it. I'd warned him. Now I just had to pray he'd take it seriously and not have me killed for touching him. Through the kitchen door window, I watched him carefully. He didn't move for a long moment, continuing his conversation with the older man. Then, casually, he reached down as if brushing something off his lap. He found the napkin. He unfolded it beneath the table, where no one else could see. "Read it." His expression didn't change, not even slightly. But something in his posture shifted. His spine straightened almost imperceptibly. His eyes, which had been focused on his companion, began scanning the room. They landed on the blonde man 2 tables away, held there. Volkov said something to one of his security men, who immediately moved toward the kitchen. Toward me. Oh God. Oh God. What had I done? The security guard pushed through the kitchen doors. He was massive, with a shaved head and a scar running down one cheek. "You," he said, pointing at me. "Mr. Volkov wants to see you. Now." Catherine went pale. "Is there a problem?" "Now," the security guard repeated, ignoring her completely. Every instinct screamed at me to run. But where would I go? And what would happen to the baby if I ran? On shaking legs, I followed the security guard back into the dining room. The other guests had returned too, their conversations. But I felt every eye on me as I was marched toward Volkov's table. He stood as I approached, towering over me. Up close, he was even more intimidating. Not just his size, but the aura of controlled violence that emanated from him like heat. "Outside," he said simply. "We need to talk." "I'm working," I started to say. "You're done working." He placed a hand on the small of my back, firm but not painful, steering me toward a side exit. His security formed a wall around us, blocking the view from the rest of the room. We stepped out into an alley behind the building. The night air was cold, making me shiver in my thin vest. Volkov's car was there, a black Mercedes with tinted windows. The back door opened. "Get in," he said. I took a step back, fear overriding every other instinct. I just wanted to help. I saw them planning to poison you, and I couldn't just, "Get in the car, Maya." He knew my name. How did he know my name? "Please," I said, hating how my voice shook. "I have a baby. I'm 6 months pregnant. Please don't hurt me." Something flickered across his face. Not quite emotion, but a shift in that perfect cold mask. His eyes dropped to my belly, then back to my face. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said, his voice softer than before. "But you just saved my life, and now you're in danger. Those men who tried to poison me, they saw you give me that napkin. They know you warned me, which means they'll come after you next." The words hit me like ice water. Of course they'd seen. I'd been so focused on warning him that I hadn't thought about protecting myself. "Get in the car," he said again. "I'm taking you somewhere safe. We'll talk." and then we'll figure out what to do next. I looked at the open car door. At the alley behind me, dark and empty. At Volkov's face, cold and dangerous, but not, I realized, threatening me. The baby kicked hard, as if offering her opinion. I got in the car. Volkov slid in beside me, and the door closed with an expensive, final-sounding click. The interior smelled like leather and his cologne. One of his security men got in the front passenger seat, and then we were moving, pulling away from the building and into the Manhattan night. "Where are you taking me?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "My home. It's secure. I can't just disappear. I have a job, an apartment. People will look for me." He pulled out his phone, typed something, then showed me the screen. A text message to Catherine. "Family emergency. Maya won't be returning tonight. Her payment will be wired." "That's not, you can't just..." I struggled to find words that would make sense to a man who clearly did whatever he wanted. "I need to go home. Your home isn't safe anymore." He pocketed his phone and turned to face me fully. "Tell me exactly what you saw and heard." So I did. The Russian conversation, the vial, the glances toward his table, every detail I could remember. He listened without interrupting, his expression unreadable. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "You speak Russian?" he finally asked. "No. I just heard the word poison. And I saw the vial. Most people would have ignored it, stayed out of it." His dark eyes studied me with an intensity that made me want to squirm. "Why didn't you?" I met his gaze, finding courage I didn't know I had. "Because I'm a nurse. I save lives. It's what I do. Even the lives of criminals?" Even then, something that might have been respect flickered in his eyes. "What's your full name?" "Maya Torres." "Where do you work, Maya Torres?" "Mercy General Hospital, emergency room." He typed something into his phone. By the time we pulled up in front of a brownstone in the Upper East Side, I was sure he knew everything about me. My address, my bank balance, probably my blood type. The brownstone was beautiful. 4 stories of pristine brick and large windows. Not what I'd expected for a crime boss. I'd imagined something more fortress-like, more obviously defensive. But when we stepped inside, I understood. The security was there, just hidden. Cameras in every corner. Reinforced doors. Men stationed at strategic points. This was a fortress, just an elegant one. "Dmitri will show you to a guest room," Volkov said. "Get some rest. We'll talk more in the morning." "I can't stay here," I protested weakly. "I have to go to work tomorrow. I've already arranged for you to take a leave of absence from the hospital. Medical reasons. Your supervisor was very understanding when my people explained you'd had some pregnancy complications." I stared at him, a mixture of anger and fear churning in my gut. "You can't just rearrange my life." "I can, and I did. Because right now, your life is in danger, and the only way to keep you alive is to keep you here, under my protection." He moved closer. Close enough that I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. "You saved my life tonight, Maya. Now, I'm going to save yours, whether you like it or not." The guest room was bigger than my entire apartment. A king-sized bed dominated the space, covered in what looked like actual silk sheets. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked a private garden, though heavy curtains were currently drawn. There was an attached bathroom with a soaking tub, a separate shower, and more marble than I'd seen outside of a museum. I stood in the middle of it all, still wearing my catering vest, and tried not to have a complete breakdown. A soft knock at the door made me jump. "Yes?" A woman entered, maybe 50, with kind eyes and graying hair pulled back in a neat bun. She carried folded clothing and towels. "Miss Torres? I'm Elena. I manage Mr. Volkov's household. I thought you might want a shower and change. These should fit you." She set down the clothes on the bed, soft cotton pajamas, a robe, even underwear still in packaging, all in what looked like exactly my size. "How did he—" I started to ask. Mr. Volkov is very thorough, Elena said with a small smile. The bathroom has everything you need. If you're hungry, I can bring up a tray. My stomach growled in answer. I'd barely eaten all day, too nervous about the catering job. That would be nice. Thank you. Of course. Any dietary restrictions? Allergies? I shook my head, too overwhelmed to speak. Elena studied me for a moment, her expression softening. I know this must be frightening, but you're safe here. Mr. Volkov protects his own, and you've become one of his own, whether you planned for it or not. After she left, I finally let myself sink onto the edge of the bed. The mattress was so soft I almost moaned. My body ached everywhere, feet, back, shoulders. The baby was doing somersaults, probably responding to my stress. I know, baby girl, I whispered, placing both hands on my belly. This is insane, but we're going to be okay. We have to be. The shower was everything I'd dreamed about during those long hospital shifts. Endless hot water pressure that actually worked, and fancy soap that smelled like lavender and something else I couldn't identify. I stood under the spray until my fingers pruned, washing away the panic along with the day's grime. The pajamas fit perfectly. So did the robe. I was towel drying my hair when another knock came. Elena returned with a tray loaded with food. Grilled chicken, roasted vegetables, fresh bread, a side of pasta, and a glass of milk. Mr. Volkov thought you might be hungry, she said, setting it on a small table by the window. This is too much, I protested, even as my mouth watered. You're eating for two, and you look like you haven't had a proper meal in weeks. Elena's tone was gentle but firm, reminding me of Rochelle. Eat, rest. Tomorrow will come soon enough. I ate everything on the tray, then climbed into the massive bed. Despite my anxiety, despite everything, exhaustion won. I was asleep within minutes. I woke to sunlight streaming, through a gap in the curtains and the smell of coffee. For a disoriented moment, I thought I was dreaming, then reality crashed back. The clock on the nightstand read 9 a.m. I'd slept for almost 10 hours straight. Another knock. Elena again, this time with a breakfast tray and more clothes. Good morning. Mr. Volkov would like to see you in his study at 10. I brought some options for you to wear. The options were maternity clothes in various styles, comfortable pants, soft shirts, even a dress. All designer labels that I recognized from magazines I'd never be able to afford. Where did these come from? I asked, fingering the fabric of a particularly soft sweater. They were delivered this morning. Mr. Volkov has people who handle such things. Elena set down the breakfast tray, eggs, toast, fresh fruit, yogurt, more coffee. Take your time. There's no rush. After she left, I ate breakfast slowly, trying to process my situation. I'd been essentially kidnapped by a Russian crime boss. He'd bought me clothes, given me a room in his mansion, and now he wanted to talk. I needed to figure out how to get out of here. Back to my life, my job, my apartment. But even as I thought it, I remembered his words. Your life is in danger. Was it really? Or was that just an excuse to keep me here? I dressed in the most practical outfit I could find, black maternity pants and a gray sweater, and tried to tame my hair into something presentable. At exactly 10 a.m., I opened my door to find Dmitri, the scarred security guard from last night, waiting in the hallway. This way, Miss Torres, he said, his accent thick but his English clear. He led me down a grand staircase to the main floor, then down a hallway lined with artwork that probably cost more than my student loans. We stopped at a heavy wooden door. Dmitri knocked once, then opened it. Volkov's study was all dark wood and leather, with built-in bookshelves covering 2 walls and large windows overlooking the second garden. He sat behind a massive desk, typing on a laptop. He looked up as I entered, and I was struck again by how intimidating he was. Even in casual clothes, dark jeans, and a black sweater that somehow still looked expensive. Maya, please, sit. He gestured to one of the leather chairs facing his desk. I sat, folding my hands in my lap to hide their trembling. I'd like to go home. I know you would. He closed his laptop and leaned back in his chair, studying me with those unreadable dark eyes. Unfortunately, that's not possible right now. You can't just keep me prisoner here. You're not a prisoner. You're a guest under my protection. What's the difference? A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Prisoners don't get designer maternity clothes. Despite everything, I almost laughed. Almost. Mr. Volkov. Alexei? He interrupted. Call me Alexei. Mr. Volkov, I repeated firmly, needing the distance that formality provided. I appreciate you warning me about the danger, but I have a life, a job, an apartment, bills to pay. I can't just disappear. He opened a drawer in his desk and pulled out a folder, sliding it across to me. Your apartment rent has been paid for the next 6 months. Your student loans have been paid in full. Your hospital has been informed you're taking medical leave due to pregnancy complications. Fully paid. Your utility bills are on automatic payment from an account I've set up in your name. I stared at the folder, afraid to touch it. You can't do that. I already did. Why? The word came out sharp, almost angry. Why would you do any of that? He was quiet for a long moment, his expression contemplative. Because you saved my life. Because you're pregnant and alone and struggling. Because I can. He leaned forward slightly. And because the men who tried to poison me last night are part of the Mikhailov family. They're dangerous, ruthless, and they absolutely saw you warn me. Which means they'll come after you to eliminate the witness. The name Mikhailov sent a chill down my spine. Even I, who knew nothing about organized crime, had heard that name. It was whispered in the hospital sometimes, when certain patients came in with gunshot wounds and the police were mysteriously absent. What do you want from me? I asked quietly. Nothing you're not willing to give. His eyes held mine. Stay here, where you're safe. Let me protect you and your baby. In return, I'll make sure you never have to work double shifts again. Never have to worry about rent or medical bills or any of the things that were keeping you up at night. I don't want to be someone's charity case. You're not charity. You're an investment. At my confused look, he continued. You're a nurse, emergency room trained. I could use someone with your skills. For what? My people occasionally need medical attention. The kind that can't go through normal hospital channels. Understanding dawned, cold and uncomfortable. You want me to be your personal nurse, to patch up criminals who can't risk going to the ER. I want you to use your skills to help people who need it. Whether those people are criminals or not is a matter of perspective. I should have said no. Should have demanded to leave, safety be damned. But I thought of my apartment, so small and cold. My job, where I worked myself to exhaustion for barely enough to survive. The eviction notice. The empty bank account. The fear that I wouldn't be able to provide for my baby. And I thought of his words. Never have to worry again. How long? I asked. Until it's safe. Until we've dealt with the Mikhailov threat. And if I say no? He stood, moving around the desk to perch on its edge, closer to me now. Then I'll take you home. And I'll assign security to watch your apartment, your workplace, everywhere you go. Because I won't let you die because of me, Maya. Not when you risked yourself to save me. If you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more emotional stories like this one. There was something in his voice, an intensity that went beyond mere obligation. I didn't understand it, couldn't begin to parse what it meant, but I felt it. That electric current between us. What happened last night? I asked. After you got my warning? His expression hardened. I had my men identify the 2 men who were planning to poison me. They were intercepted before they could act. They're being questioned. I didn't want to know what questioned meant in his world. The Mikhailovs sent them, he continued. It's the opening move in what will likely become a much larger conflict. Territory dispute. They want what I have. And me? I'm just collateral damage? No. The word was firm, absolute. You're under my protection now, which means anyone who touches you touches me. And that's a line no one crosses twice. The possessiveness in his voice should have scared me. Instead, it sent a strange warmth through my chest. When was the last time anyone had promised to protect me? When was the last time I'd mattered to someone? I need to call my friend, I said. Rochelle, from the hospital. She'll worry. Your phone is being monitored by my tech people. Use it for normal conversations, but don't mention where you are or anything about last night. He handed me my phone, which had apparently been retrieved from my apartment. Along with several other bags of my belongings, I realized, seeing them stacked neatly by the door. I called Rochelle, my heart pounding. She answered on the first ring. Maya! Oh my God! I've been worried sick. The hospital said, You're on medical leave? What happened? I'm okay, I said, glancing at Alexei, who watched me with that unnerving intensity. I had some complications, blood pressure issues. The doctor wants me on bed rest for a while. Where are you? I'll come. Visit. I'm staying with a friend, someone who can help take care of me. The lies tasted bitter. But I'm fine, Ro. I promise. We talked for a few more minutes, Rochelle fussing over me in a way that made my eyes sting with tears. When I hung up, I felt more alone than ever. You're good at lying, Alexei observed. I'm good at surviving, I corrected. There's a difference. Something shifted in his expression. Understanding, maybe. Or recognition. Yes, there is. He stood, extending a hand to help me up from the chair. His palm was warm, calloused. Come, let me show you the house. If you're staying, you should know your way around. The brownstone was even more impressive than I'd realized. 4 floors, each more luxurious than the last. A state-of-the-art kitchen where a chef was already preparing lunch. A library with thousands of books in multiple languages. A gym that looked like something from a magazine. A media room with a screen bigger than my apartment wall. And, everywhere, subtle security, cameras, reinforced doors, men positioned at key points, nodding respectfully as Alexei passed. The 3rd floor is my private residence, he said, as we climbed the stairs. You're welcome everywhere else in the house. We reached the 2nd floor, where my room was located. There are 4 other guest rooms on this floor. Elena lives in the staff quarters on the 4th floor. If you need anything, day or night, you can call her. He stopped outside my room, one hand braced against the doorframe. Up close, I could see the faint scar along his jawline, the slightly crooked set of his nose that suggested it had been broken at least once. He was dangerous and damaged and somehow magnetic. Why are you being so nice to me? I asked quietly. He was silent for a long moment, his dark eyes searching my face. Because you're carrying a child. Because you're alone. Because when you saw someone in danger, you didn't hesitate to help, even though it put you at risk. He reached out slowly, giving me time to pull away, and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. Because there's something about you, Maya Torres, that makes me want to be better than I am. My breath caught. His fingers lingered against my cheek for just a moment before he stepped back, professional distance returning. Rest, he said. Lunch will be ready in an hour, and then, if you're feeling up to it, I'd like you to meet Victor. Who's Victor? A shadow crossed his face. My son. I spent the next hour in my room, trying to process everything. Alexei Volkov had a son, a family. It shouldn't have surprised me men had families, even criminal ones, but somehow it did. It made him more human, more real. Elena brought lunch to my room, another feast I couldn't possibly finish, along with prenatal vitamins and a note from Alexei. Take care of yourself and the baby. Doctor's appointment scheduled for tomorrow at my private clinic. Of course he had a private clinic. Why wouldn't he? At 2 p.m., Elena returned to tell me Alexei was waiting in the garden. I followed her downstairs and through a set of French doors that opened onto a beautifully landscaped space. Rose bushes, a fountain, stone pathways winding between carefully tended beds. And there, on a bench near the fountain, sat Alexei with a small boy in his lap. The child couldn't have been more than 3, with dark hair like his father's and the same striking bone structure. He was reading a picture book, his small finger tracing the words while Alexei's deep voice narrated in Russian. They looked so normal, so far from the dangerous criminal I knew Alexei to be. He looked up as I approached, and something in his expression softened. "Maya, come meet Victor." The little boy turned, eyeing me with solemn curiosity. "Kto ona, Papa?" he asked. "English, Victor," Alexei said gently. "This is Miss Maya. She's going to be staying with us for a while." "Why?" Victor asked with the bluntness of small children. "Because she's my friend, and she needs a safe place to stay." Victor considered this, then looked at my belly. "You have a baby in there?" I couldn't help but smile. "Yes, a little girl." His eyes went wide. "Can I see her?" "Not yet. She has to grow more first, maybe in a few months." "Will she be my friend?" The question caught me off guard. I glanced at Alexei, who was watching this exchange with an expression I couldn't quite read. I think she'd like that very much. Victor seemed satisfied with this answer. He squirmed off his father's lap and approached me carefully, as if I might spook. Then, with the fearlessness of children, he placed his small hand on my belly. The baby kicked, as if in response. Victor's face lit up. "She's saying hello." "She is," I agreed, my throat tight with unexpected emotion. Alexei stood, moving to stand beside his son. "Victor, why don't you go find Natasha? I think she has a snack ready for you." "Okay, Papa." The little boy waved at me before, running toward the house, where a young woman, presumably Natasha, his nanny, was waiting. "He's beautiful," I said once Victor was out of earshot. "He's everything to me." Alexei's voice was rough with emotion. His mother died when he was born. Complications during delivery. So it's just us. The revelation hit me hard. He understood then. The fear of being a single parent. The weight of being responsible for a tiny life. "I'm sorry," I said quietly. "Don't be. She gave me the greatest gift anyone could." He looked at me then. Really looked at me. "I know what you're facing, Maya. Raising a child alone. The fear. The exhaustion. The constant worry that you're not enough. How do you do it?" I asked. "How do you balance everything?" "I don't. Not really. I have help Natasha, Elena, others. And I make sure Victor is protected, always. That he never has to worry about the things I worry about." He moved closer. "That's what I can offer you. Help. Protection. A chance to be a mother without constantly drowning." Tears pricked my eyes. He was offering everything I'd been desperate for. Security. Safety. Help with the baby. But at what cost? "What do you get out of this?" I asked. "Really?" He was quiet for a long moment, his gaze drifting to where Victor played in the distance. "Peace of mind. Knowing that someone who saved my life is taken care of. Knowing that Victor will have a friend, someone close to his age." He looked back at me, and maybe, selfishly, knowing that someone in this house isn't afraid of me. "I am afraid of you," I admitted, "but not of me as a person. Of what I represent, what I do. There's a difference." He stepped closer, close enough that I could smell his cologne again. "I don't want you to be afraid, Maya. I want you to feel safe. I don't know if I can do that." "Then let's start smaller. Stay for dinner tonight. Meet some of my people. See that we're not monsters, just people trying to survive in a complicated world." I should have said no. Should have maintained my distance. But Victor's delighted laugh echoed from the house, and I thought about my baby, my little girl, growing up with a friend, growing up safe and cared for. "Okay," I said. "Dinner." His smile was like sunrise, warm and unexpected. "Good. Come. I'll show you the medical suite. You should know what you're working with." The medical suite was on the first floor, accessed through a hidden door in what appeared to be a coat closet. It was better equipped than some emergency rooms I'd worked in. Examination table, full surgical setup, pharmacy stocked with everything from antibiotics to anesthesia. "This is extensive," I said, running my hand over the equipment. "Who set this up?" "A doctor who used to work for me. He retired last year. Since then we've managed, but it's not ideal." "What kind of injuries am I likely to see?" His expression grew serious. "Gunshot wounds mostly. Knife wounds, broken bones, burns, the kind of things that happen in my line of work." "I'm not a trauma surgeon." "No, but you're ER trained. You can stabilize, treat minor injuries, and handle emergencies until we can get proper surgical care if needed." I moved through the suite, checking supplies, noting what was there and what wasn't. My nursing instincts kicked in, cataloging, organizing. "You'll need more gauze and better suture kits. This antibiotic selection is outdated. Make a list." "I'll have everything delivered by tomorrow." I turned to face him. "If I'm going to do this, I need rules. No one dies in this room if I can help it. I don't care what they did or who they are. If someone needs help, I help them. That's non-negotiable." "Agreed. And I need access to proper medical resources. If someone needs hospital care, they get hospital care. Within reason. Some situations can't risk that kind of exposure. Then those are situations I won't be part of." We stared at each other, neither backing down. Finally he nodded. "Fair enough. Anything else?" "Yes. If at any point I feel unsafe, if your world becomes too much, I get to leave. No questions, no consequences." Something flickered in his eyes. Pain, maybe, or fear that I might actually leave. "I can't guarantee your safety outside these walls. Not while the Mikhailov threat exists. Then we better hope that threat gets resolved quickly." "We better hope," he agreed. Dinner that night was in a formal dining room with a table that could seat 20. But it was just the four of us. Alexei, Victor, Natasha, and me. The meal was simple by mansion standards. Roasted chicken, vegetables, fresh bread. Victor chattered through dinner, telling me about his day in a mix of English and Russian, occasionally corrected gently by his father. Natasha was quiet but kind, a young woman, maybe 25, who clearly adored the little boy. It felt almost normal, like a family dinner, like something I might have had in another life. After dinner, Alexei carried a sleepy Victor upstairs for bed. I found myself wandering back to the library, drawn by all those books. Most were in Russian or other languages I didn't recognize, but there was a whole section of English literature. Classics, contemporary fiction, medical texts. "You like to read?" I turned to find Alexei in the doorway, jacket removed, tie loosened. He looked more relaxed than I'd seen him, more approachable. "When I have time, which isn't often." "You have time now." He moved into the room, gesturing to the shelves. "All of this is yours to explore. There's also a tablet in your room with access to thousands more books. You really have thought of everything." "I try." He poured 2 drinks from a decanter on the side table, then seemed to remember. "Sorry, you're pregnant. Would you like some sparkling water instead?" The consideration was unexpected and touching. "Yes, please." He returned moments later with a crystal glass of sparkling water with lemon. We sat in the leather, chairs by the fireplace, the flames casting dancing shadows. "Tell me about Victor's mother," I said. "If you want to." He was quiet for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. Then, Irina. She was fire. Beautiful, passionate, completely inappropriate for someone in my position. But I loved her anyway. How did you meet? She was a violinist. I heard her play at a concert and couldn't get her out of my head. Took me 3 months to convince her to have dinner with me. A sad smile touched his lips. She knew what I was, what I did. She chose me anyway, and it killed her. That's not fair. Childbirth complications happen. It wasn't your fault, wasn't it? If she'd never met me, never gotten pregnant, she'd still be playing violin. Still be alive. Or she'd have died in a car accident, or from cancer, or any of 1,000 other ways. You can't blame yourself for the randomness of the universe. He looked at me, surprise evident. You sound like you speak from experience. I took a sip of water, considering how much to share. My parents died when I was 8. Car accident. Some drunk driver ran a red light and that was it. No warning, no goodbye. Just gone. I'm sorry. I spent years wondering if I could have changed it somehow. If I'd asked to stay home that day. If we'd left 5 minutes later. If. But eventually, I realized that's not how life works. Bad things happen to good people, and all we can do is try to find meaning in what comes after. And what meaning did you find? That life is precious. That every moment matters. That if I have the skills to save someone, I have an obligation to try. I met his eyes. Even if that someone is a Russian crime boss who's kidnapped me. I didn't kidnap you. Semantics. He laughed, the sound rich and genuine, and I realized it was the first time I'd heard him really laugh. It transformed his face, making him look younger, less burdened. You're not what I expected, he said. What did you expect? Someone more frightened, more breakable. I'm plenty frightened, and definitely breakable. But I'm also a single pregnant woman who's been on my own for a long time. You learn to hide the fear and push through. You shouldn't have to. But I do. We all do, in our own ways. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, his eyes intense on mine. I meant what I said earlier, about wanting you to feel safe here. This isn't a prison, Maya. It's a sanctuary. You can leave whenever you want. But you won't recommend it. No. Because I've seen what the Mikhailovs do to people who cross them. And I won't let that happen to you or your baby. The fire crackled between us, filling the silence. Outside, night had fully fallen, the city lights visible through the windows. Can I ask you something? I said. Anything. Do you ever regret it? This life? He was quiet for a long time, his gaze distant. Every day. And never. He looked back at me. It's the only life I know. My father was in this world, his father before him. I was born into it, trained for it. It's in my blood. But Victor doesn't have to be. No, he said firmly. Victor will have choices I never had. He'll go to good schools, have legitimate opportunities. He'll be able to be whatever he wants to be, even if he wants to follow in your footsteps. Pain flashed across his face. Especially then. I'd do everything in my power to steer him away from this life. I believed him. Believed in the depth of his love for his son, his desire to give Victor what he'd never had, freedom. You're a good father, I said softly. I try. It's all any of us can do. We sat in companionable silence for a while longer, drinking our respective drinks, watching the fire. When I finally stood to go to bed, exhaustion pulling at me, he stood as well. Thank you, I said, for dinner, for all of this. You don't have to thank me. Yes, I do, because despite everything, despite how insane this situation is, you're keeping your word. You're protecting me. And I haven't had that in a very long time. Something fierce and protective flashed in his eyes. You have it now. For as long as you need it. He walked me to my room, a gesture that felt oddly chivalrous from a man who probably ordered executions before breakfast. At my door, he paused. Sleep well, Maya. And if you need anything at all, my room is directly above yours. Just call. I will. Thank you. I closed the door and leaned against it, my heart racing. What was I doing? Getting comfortable in a crime boss's house? Eating meals with his family? Starting to see him as something more than just dangerous? But as I changed into the silk pajamas and climbed into the impossibly comfortable bed, I couldn't deny the truth. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt safe. And that was the most dangerous thing of all. The next 2 weeks passed in a strange blur of normalcy and unreality. I woke each morning in silk sheets, ate meals prepared by a personal chef, and spent my afternoons in the medical suite organizing supplies or reading in the library. Victor became my constant companion, following me around the house with endless questions about the baby, about nursing, about everything. "Will she have hair when she comes out?" he asked one afternoon as we sat in the garden, his small hand resting on my belly. "Probably. Most babies do." "What color?" "I don't know yet. Maybe dark like mine." He considered this seriously. "Papa says I looked like a little potato when I was born." I laughed, imagining tiny Victor as a wrinkled newborn. "All babies look like potatoes at first. Then they get cute. I'm very cute now," he said matter-of-factly. "Yes, you are." Alexei appeared on the terrace, phone in hand, his expression tense. He'd been in meetings all morning, his voice carrying through the house in rapid Russian. Whatever was happening with the Mikhailovs, it was escalating. "Victor, go find Natasha," he said. "It's time for your lessons." The little boy pouted but obeyed, giving my belly one last pat before running off. Alexei took his place on the bench beside me, and I could feel the tension radiating from him. "Bad news?" I asked. "Complicated news." He rubbed his jaw. A gesture I'd learned meant he was frustrated. "The Mikhailovs are pushing harder. They hit one of my warehouses last night. No casualties, thank God, but they're sending a message." "What kind of message?" "That they won't stop until they get what they want. Which is my territory, my operations, everything I've built." I placed my hand over his, the gesture instinctive. "What are you going to do?" He looked at our joined hands, then up at my face. "What I have to. But I need to know you're safe first." "I'm safe here. You've made sure of that. For now. But if this escalates, and it will, I need to consider other options. There's a property in Switzerland. More remote, easier to secure. I'm thinking of sending you and Victor there until this is resolved." Panic fluttered in my chest. "You're sending us away? For your protection. What about you?" The question hung between us, heavy with implications I wasn't ready to examine. His eyes softened, and he turned his hand to properly hold mine. "I'll be fine. I've survived worse than the Mikhailovs." "That's not reassuring." "Maya." He shifted closer, his free hand coming up to cup my cheek. "I can't do what needs to be done if I'm constantly worried about you. If I know you and Victor are safe, somewhere far from this mess, I can focus. I can end this." "By end this, you mean?" "I mean what I mean. Don't ask questions you don't want answers to." I should have pulled away. Should have been horrified by the casual way he discussed violence. But instead, I leaned into his touch, finding comfort in his presence. "When?" I asked. "Soon. A few days, maybe. I'm still making arrangements." That night I couldn't sleep. The baby was restless, kicking and rolling, and my mind wouldn't quiet. I kept thinking about Alexei's plan to send me away, about how much I'd miss Victor's laughter, Elena's kindness, the strange sense of belonging I'd found in this house, how much I'd miss him. It was dangerous, these feelings developing between us. Inappropriate. He was a criminal, and I was. What? His captive? His employee? Something else entirely? At midnight, I gave up on sleep and padded downstairs in my robe, thinking maybe some warm milk would help. The house was quiet, only the security system's gentle beeps breaking the silence. I found Alexei in the kitchen, standing at the counter with a glass of vodka, staring out the window at the darkened garden. He was shirtless, wearing only pajama pants, and I could see the scars that marked his back bullet wounds, knife cuts, the evidence of a violent life. "Can't sleep?" he asked without turning around. "The baby's doing gymnastics. You? Too much on my mind." He turned to face me, and in the dim kitchen light, he looked exhausted, vulnerable in a way I'd never seen. "Want some tea?" "That would be nice." He moved with surprising domesticity, filling the kettle, pulling out mugs and tea bags. "Elena's recipe," he said. "Chamomile with honey. She swears it helps with sleep." We sat at the kitchen island, waiting for the water to boil. The intimacy of the moment, just the two of us in the quiet house, felt significant somehow, like crossing an invisible line. "Can I ask you something personal?" I said. "You can ask. I may not answer." "Why haven't you remarried?" "After Irina." He was quiet for a long moment, his fingers tracing patterns on the marble countertop. "Because no one else has ever made me feel what she did. And because bringing someone into this life, into this world, feels like a death sentence. But you brought me here. You were already in danger because of me. That's different than choosing to involve someone." He looked up at me. "Although I suppose the result is the same. You're here, in my world, at risk because of me. I made the choice to warn you. That's on me." "Is it? Or did I manipulate the situation, use your circumstances against you?" His expression was pained. "I knew you were desperate. I knew you had no other options. I could have just paid off your debts and let you go back to your life. Instead, I brought you here, into my home, made you dependent on me. You're giving yourself too much credit. I'm not that easy to manipulate, aren't you? You're here, aren't you? Wearing clothes I bought, sleeping in my house, caring for my son." He stood abruptly, pacing to the window. "Tell me, Maya, if I hadn't paid your debts, if you weren't in danger, would you still be here?" The question stung because I didn't know the answer. Would I have stayed if I had a choice? Or was I just making the best of a bad situation? The kettle whistled, breaking the tension. Alexei poured the tea with shaking hands, and I realized, with a start, that he was upset. Actually upset, not just his usual controlled calm. "I would stay," I said quietly. He froze, his back to me. "What?" "To. If you'd paid my debts and there was no danger, if I had every opportunity to walk away safely, I think I would still stay, at least for a while." I took a breath. "Because Victor needs someone besides paid staff. Because you need someone who isn't afraid to call you on your bullshit. And because, despite everything, I feel safer here than I have anywhere else." He turned slowly, his dark eyes searching mine. "You don't mean that." "I do. And it terrifies me." I stood, moving closer to him. "I should hate you. You're everything I should run from. But when I see you with Victor, when you look at me like I matter, when you protect me without asking for anything in return, it makes me want things I shouldn't want." "Maya." My name was barely a whisper. "You don't know what you're saying, don't I? I'm 28 years old, pregnant, and alone, and for the first time in years, someone is actually taking care of me instead of the other way around. Do you know how intoxicating that is? How dangerous?" He closed the distance between us in 2 strides, his hands coming up to frame my face. "This is wrong. You should go back upstairs. We should forget this conversation happened. Should we?" I placed my hands on his chest, feeling his heart racing beneath my palms. "Or should we stop pretending there isn't something between us? What's between us is gratitude and circumstance. Nothing more. You're lying. Yes." The admission seemed torn from him. "I am." And then he was kissing me, desperate and fierce, his hands tangling in my hair. I kissed him back with equal desperation, months of loneliness and fear and longing pouring into that kiss. His lips were surprisingly soft, his touch gentle despite the intensity. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. "This is a terrible idea," he said. "Probably the worst. You deserve better than this. Better than me. Maybe. But I don't want better. I want real. I want you." He pulled back to look at me, his expression tortured. "If we do this, if we cross this line, I can't promise you a normal life. I can't promise safety or stability or any of the things you should have. I don't need promises. I need someone who sees me, who doesn't treat me like I'm fragile or helpless. Someone who looks at me like you're looking at me right now. Like you're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." His thumb traced my lower lip. "Because you are, Maya. Beautiful and strong and so far beyond anything I deserve. Then we're perfect for each other. Because I don't deserve a crime boss with a heart of gold who makes me feel like I matter." He laughed, the sound broken and beautiful. "Heart of gold? You clearly don't know the things I've done. I know enough, and I'm choosing you anyway." This time when he kissed me, it was slower, deeper. A promise instead of a question. His hands were careful around my belly, protective even in passion. When he finally pulled away, his eyes were dark with desire and something else, fear. "Come upstairs," he said. "Not for just to talk, to be close. I need to be close to you." I took his hand, and we climbed the stairs together to his private floor. His bedroom was masculine and spare, dominated by a massive bed and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. We lay down together, fully clothed, my back against his chest, his arm draped protectively over my belly. "Tell me about her," he murmured into my hair. "Your daughter. What do you want to know?" "Everything." "What are you going to name her?" I smiled in the darkness. "I'm thinking Elena. After someone kind who helped me when I needed it." His arm tightened around me. "Elena would love that. She kicks most at night, usually around midnight. She has hiccups at least once a day, which is adorable and annoying. And she responds to music, classical especially. Makes her calm. Like Victor, he loves music. Probably from his mother. We talked for hours, sharing stories, dreams, fears. He told me about growing up in his father's world, about the first time he'd had to kill someone at 16, about the nightmares that still haunted him. I told him about my parents' death, about foster care, about putting myself through nursing school on scholarships and sheer determination. Somewhere around 3 a.m., I finally fell asleep in his arms, feeling safer than I had in years. I woke to sunlight and the smell of coffee. Alexei was sitting in a chair by the window, fully dressed, watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Morning," I said, suddenly self-conscious. "Good morning." He handed me a cup of tea. "I should apologize for last night. I took advantage." "Stop. You didn't take advantage of anything. We're both adults. We both made choices." He nodded slowly. "Still, things are complicated enough without adding this to the mix." My heart sank. "Are you saying last night was a mistake?" "I'm saying I don't know what it was, or what it means going forward." He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. "I care about you, Maya, more than I should. But caring about me is dangerous. Being with me is dangerous. I need you to understand that." "I do understand, and I'm choosing it anyway. Even knowing what I am, what I do, even knowing." Before he could respond, his phone rang. He answered in Russian, his expression darkening with each word. When he hung up, he looked at me with barely controlled fury. "The Mikhailovs know you're here. They know about Victor, and they're threatening to come for both of you unless I hand over my operations by the end of the week." Ice flooded my veins. "How did they find out?" "Someone talked. Someone in my organization betrayed us." He stood, pacing like a caged animal. "I'm moving you both today. Within the hour. Switzerland was too obvious. They'll be watching all my known properties. I'm sending you somewhere else, somewhere unexpected. Where? Better if you don't know yet. Less risk if they interrogate anyone here." The word interrogate sent another chill through me. This wasn't just business anymore. This was war. "What about you?" I asked again. I'm ending this. Today. He pulled out his phone, typing rapidly. I have people in place. It's time to move. Alexei, he crossed to me, pulling me into a fierce embrace. I need you to trust me. Can you do that? I nodded against his chest, breathing in his scent, trying to memorize this moment. Good. Now go pack. Only essentials. Dmitri will drive you and Victor. Elena's going too, to help with him. And Natasha? She's been with the family for 2 years. I trust her, but I'm not taking chances. She'll stay here. Within 30 minutes, we were in an SUV with tinted windows, Elena holding a confused Victor, me clutching a small bag of belongings. Alexei stood in the driveway, his face a mask of controlled fury. He leaned in through my window. I will come for you. No matter what happens, I will find you and bring you home. This is home? I asked, surprised by the truth in those words. It is if you want it to be. He kissed me then, hard and desperate. A kiss that felt like goodbye. Then we were pulling away, the brownstone disappearing behind us. The safe house turned out to be a modest cabin in upstate New York, buried deep in the woods with no neighbors for miles. It was comfortable but simple, 3 bedrooms, a kitchen, a living room with a fireplace. Nothing like the luxury of the brownstone. Dmitri stayed with us, along with 2 other security guards I didn't know. They set up a perimeter, installed additional cameras, and made it clear that no one was leaving without permission. Victor adjusted quickly, delighted by the woods and the wildlife. But I could see Elena's worry, could feel my own anxiety growing with each hour that passed without word from Alexei. On the second day, I finally demanded answers. What's happening? Has anyone heard from him? Dmitri's expression was grim. Mr. Volkov is handling the situation. That's all I can tell you. That's not good enough. I need to know he's safe. He's doing what needs to be done. For you, for Victor, for all of us. I wanted to scream at the non-answer. Instead, I went to my room and called Alexei's phone. It went straight to voicemail. That night, I lay in bed unable to sleep, one hand on my belly, feeling the baby kick. Your mama is losing her mind? I whispered, and I think I'm in love with a very dangerous man. What am I supposed to do with that? The baby kicked again, as if to say, figure it out. On the 3rd day, Elena's phone rang. I watched her answer, her expression going from worried to terrified to relieved in the span of seconds. Maya, she said, her voice shaking. It's over. Mr. Volkov is alive. He's coming for us. Relief crashed through me so hard my knees went weak. When? Tomorrow. He's wrapping up some final details, then he's coming personally. I spent that night pacing, too anxious to sleep. The baby seemed to sense my agitation, kicking and rolling constantly. When dawn finally broke, I was exhausted and wired, standing at the window watching for any sign of approach. The black SUV arrived at 9 a.m. I was out the door before it fully stopped, despite Dmitri's protests about safety protocols. Alexei emerged from the vehicle, and my breath caught. He looked terrible, bruised face, split lip, moving carefully as if his ribs hurt, but alive. He was alive. Maya! He caught me as I practically threw myself at him, his arms closing around me despite whatever injuries he was hiding. Easy. I'm a bit banged up. What happened? Are you okay? Did they? He silenced me with a kiss, gentle because of his split lip but no less intense. I'm fine. It's done. The Mikhailovs are no longer a threat. I wanted to ask what that meant, but I wasn't sure I wanted the answer. Instead, I just held him, feeling his heart beat against mine. Papa! Victor burst out of the cabin, Natasha right behind him, throwing himself at his father's legs. Alexei winced but scooped him up anyway, holding his son close. Hey, little man, miss me? So much. Did you bring me a present? Despite everything, Alexei laughed. Maybe. We'll see. Elena appeared, relief written across her face. She and Alexei exchanged words in Russian, and I saw tears in her eyes as she hugged him. Finally, he set Victor down and turned back to me. "We need to talk. Privately." We walked into the woods a short distance, just far enough to be out of earshot. The morning sun filtered through the trees, birds singing around us, the scene almost peaceful. "Tell me," I said. "All of it." He leaned against a tree, clearly exhausted. I gave them a choice: leave New York permanently or face the consequences. They chose to fight. His jaw tightened. So I gave them consequences. Their leadership is gone. Their operations are dismantled. Anyone who tries to rebuild will face the same fate. "Gone? You mean—" "Yes, I mean exactly that." His eyes met mine, challenging. "Does that change how you feel about me?" I should have said yes. Should have been horrified. But I thought of the threat they'd made against me and Victor. Innocent people they'd been willing to hurt to get what they wanted. I thought of Alexei, doing what he had to do to protect his family. "No," I said quietly. "It doesn't change anything." Relief flashed across his face. "You mean that?" "I do. I don't like it. I won't pretend to understand your world or approve of the violence. But I understand why you did what you did. And I'm grateful we're safe." He pulled me close, his face buried in my hair. "I was so afraid. The whole time, all I could think about was getting back to you. Making sure you were safe. Making sure—" He pulled back to look at me. "I love you, Maya. I know it's too soon, too complicated, too everything. But I love you. And I need you to know that before you make any decisions." My heart stuttered. "What decisions?" "Or whether you want me to set you up somewhere safe, far away from all this. Give you money, protection, everything you need to raise your daughter in peace." His voice was rough with emotion. "I will understand if you choose to leave. I'll hate it, but I'll understand." I placed my hands on his chest, feeling his heart racing beneath my palms. "I choose you. I choose this crazy, dangerous, impossible life, because I love you too. And because Victor needs a mother figure, and my daughter needs a father, and we need each other." "You're sure?" "Because once you're fully in this world, there's no going back. You'll be tied to me, to my organization, to everything I am. I'm already tied to you. Have been, since the moment you pulled me into that car." I smiled. "Besides, someone needs to keep you alive. Clearly you're terrible at it on your own." He laughed, then winced. "Definitely bruised ribs. Come on, let's get you inside so I can examine you properly. And then we're going home." "Home," he repeated, as if testing the word. "Yes, let's go home." 3 months later, I went into labor on a Tuesday afternoon. Alexei, normally so calm and controlled, completely panicked. He had me in the car before I'd even finished packing my hospital bag, calling ahead to his private doctor, calling Elena to get Victor, calling everyone. "Breathe," I told him as another contraction hit. "I'm the one having the baby, and I'm calmer than you. This is different. This is you. This is—" He gripped the steering wheel tighter. "What if something goes wrong? What if—" "Nothing's going to go wrong. We have the best medical care money can buy, and I'm tough. Remember?" 12 hours later, Elena Maria Torres Volkov entered the world, screaming at the top of her tiny lungs. She was perfect dark hair, hazel eyes, 10 fingers and toes. And when Alexei held her for the first time, tears streaming down his face, I fell in love with him all over again. Victor was completely smitten, insisting on holding his baby sister constantly. "She's so small," he whispered in awe. "Like a little doll. A very loud doll," Alexei said with a smile as Elena let out another wail. We brought her home to the brownstone home, because that's what it had become, and life settled into a new rhythm. Late-night feedings, diaper changes, Victor helping in his 3-year-old way. Alexei's organization running smoothly in the background, but never touching the bubble of domesticity we'd created. One night, when Elena was 6 weeks old, I found Alexei in the nursery at 3 a.m., holding her while she slept. He was singing softly in Russian, some lullaby I didn't know. "You're good at this," I said from the doorway. He looked up, smiling. "Practice." Victor was a terrible sleeper. I moved to join them, leaning against his side, watching our daughter's tiny chest rise and fall. "Are you happy?" I asked. "Happier than I ever thought possible." He kissed the top of my head. "You saved my life, Maya. Not just that night at the restaurant, but every day since. You gave me something to live for beyond survival. A real family. A real home. We saved each other." I corrected. "I was drowning before I met you, and now you're exactly where you belong." 6 months after Elena was born, Alexei proposed. Not with fanfare or grand gestures, but quietly one morning over breakfast, Victor helping by presenting me with the ring, a family heirloom that had belonged to his grandmother. "Will you marry me?" Alexei asked, his voice steady but his eyes nervous. "Will you be my wife, officially? Make this family real in every way?" I looked at the ring, at Victor's eager face, at Alexei's hopeful expression, at the life we'd built from danger and desperation, and unlikely love. "Yes," I said. 1,000 times yes. The wedding was small, private, just family and a few trusted friends. I wore a simple white dress that accommodated my still recovering body. Victor was the ring bearer, taking his job very seriously. Elena slept through the entire ceremony in Elena the housekeeper's arms. When Alexei kissed me as his wife, I tasted salt and realized we were both crying. "I love you," he whispered against my lips. "My fierce, brave Maya, I love you too. My dangerous, devoted Alexei." 2 years later, I stood in our kitchen watching Victor and Elena play in the garden through the window. Victor was teaching her to chase butterflies, her toddler legs wobbly but determined. Alexei's arms came around me from behind, his hands resting on my belly where baby number 3 was already making their presence known. "Another one," he said with wonder. "Are you sure you want 3? Are you complaining?" "Never. I just want you to be happy." I turned in his arms, looking up at the man who'd changed my entire world. He was still dangerous, still involved in things I didn't ask about. But he was also a devoted father, a loving husband, a man who'd given me everything I'd never dared to dream of. "I am happy," I said. "Happier than I ever thought possible." Who knew that saving a mafia boss's life would end up saving mine? He laughed, pulling me closer. Who knew that a pregnant nurse would walk into my world and turn it upside down? Best decision I ever made. Writing that note? No. Getting in your car. From the garden, Victor called out. "Papa! Mama!" Elena caught a butterfly. We went outside together, joining our children in the sunshine. And as I watched Alexei swing Elena onto his shoulders while Victor chattered excitedly about the butterfly, I thought about that night 2 years ago. The night I'd written those 4 words that changed everything. They poisoned your drink. I'd saved his life. He'd saved mine. And together, we'd built something beautiful from danger and desperation. A family, a home, a love that shouldn't have worked but somehow did. Because sometimes the most dangerous choice is the right one. Sometimes the person you should run from is the person you're meant to run to. And sometimes a desperate moment becomes the beginning of everything you never knew you needed. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you loved this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.